to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles. You're watching ASEAN in Focus on tonight's headlines. Pag-asa reports that Typhoon Betty, also known as Mawar, has weakened while traversing the waters east of Batanes. However, the typhoon is expected to continue bringing heavy rains and strong winds.
It's an area.
Southeast Asia has been growing really fast in the last couple of decades, but things have gotten a bit tricky lately with all the uncertainty caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war. Now, to tackle the challenges, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN Secretariat, have collaborated on a paper called Enabling Sustainable Investment in ASEAN. The paper focuses on finding ways to attract sustainable investment and address the current obstacles in the region. And North Korea has officially announced its plan to launch a reconnaissance satellite in June, stating that it's necessary to monitor the military movements of the U.S. and its allies in real time. The designated warning areas included waters near the Yellow Sea, the East China Sea, and to the east of Luzon Islands in the Philippines. A new report from the United Nations sounds the alarm on increasing food insecurity in 18 hunger hotspots, which include 22 countries. Countries like the Central African Republic, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, Kenya, Pakistan, the Syrian Arab Republic, and now Myanmar are also flagged as hotspots with a significant concern for acute food insecurity. First, here in the country, Pag-asa reported that Typhoon Betty, also known as Mawar, has weakened while traversing the waters east of Batanes. However, the typhoon is expected to continue bringing heavy rainfall and strong winds.
Kaya nung kanina umaga, ay inaasahan po natin na babagal pa ito ngayon at hanggang bukas. And then yung habagat, hindi lamang yung malakas na hangin dala ng habagat, kasama na rin yung mga pag-ulan, paminsan-minsang malalakas na pag-ulan. And then, sa ating forecast track, mula ngayon hanggang Wednesday, so mula ngayon hanggang Wednesday o Thursday, mabagal pa rin ang pagkilos ng bagyo. Ito yung Thursday. And then, inaasahan pa rin natin na dito lang siya sa malapit sa Batanes, Taiwan area. After that is uti-uti ng mag-weather curve palabas ng PAR. So, inaasahan po natin lalabas ng PAR si Betty by Thursday or Friday. So, isa na lang pong lugar na sa ilalim ng signal number 2. Yan po sa Batanes. So, may ibang lugar po na po sa ilalim ng signal ng mga cyclone wind signal. And then, signal number 1 ay doon na naman po sa northern at eastern portion ng Isabela, Apayao, eastern portion ng Ilocos Norte, northern portion ng Kalinga, northeastern portion ng Abra, Cagayan kasama Babuyan Islands. So sa mga lugar po ito ay patuloy pa rin na masugid na panahon kung saan ay may mga paminsan-minsang malakas na pag-ulan at malakas na hangin. At kasalukuyan nakakaranas po ng malakas na pag-ulan dito sa Batanes, sa Babuyan Islands, at meron dito po sa may Ilocos Norte. At yun din sa Cagayan, parte ng Cagayan.
Staying in the country, the Climate Change Commission emphasized the need for a collective effort from the entire nation and communities to address the impacts of climate change. The country's National Climate Change Action Plan 2011-2028 lays out the agenda for adaptation and mitigation measures. Take a look.
Whole of nation approach and whole of community approach. Ang ibig sabihin po niyan, lahat ng mga national government agencies, local government agencies, yung whole of society approach, including the private industry partners, including what we call the different homeowners association, yan ay magkakaroon ng kanya-kanyang action plan. Yan. Sa national level, we have what we call the National Adaptation Plan. We have the nationally determined contribution. Sa local level, you have the LCCAP or Local Climate Change Action Plan. And then we have also the Industry Climate Change Action Plan.
Now, this action plan focuses on crucial areas such as ensuring food security, achieving water sufficiency, maintaining ecological and environmental stability, safeguarding human security, promoting climate-smart industries and services, advancing sustainable energy practices, and fostering knowledge and capacity development. As part of the commitments under the Nationally Determined Contributions, or NDC, the Philippines has previously pledged to reduce and avoid greenhouse gas emissions by 75% by 2030. Now, this action plan focuses on crucial areas such as ensuring food security, achieving water sufficiency, maintaining ecological and environmental stability,
Ang ating pong panawagan sa ating mga local government units na ipasa na yung tinatawag nating Local Climate Change Action Plan in a form of an ordinance. Ano pong ibig sabihin yan? Mayroon pong nakapagpasa sa DILG at sa ating tanggapan na mayroon silang mga resolusyon. Ngunit hindi po uubra na ito'y resolusyon lang, kailangan ito'y mga ordinansa. Kaya mayroon po tayong joint memorandum circular with the DILG na to cascade information to the different local government units upang ating mga LGU ay magkaroon ng Local Climate Change Action Plan, upang magkaroon ng whole of society approach and whole of nation approach sa ating giyera laban sa climate change. We owe it not to ourselves but to the next generation. Ang sabi ng UN FCC, IPCC report, by 2030 magkukulang ang pagkain. By 2050 magkakaroon ng famine. At by 2050 we will breach what we call the 1.5, mahigit 2 degrees centigrade ang pagtaas ng ating temperatura. And by that time, taon-taon ang problema ng malalakas na bagyo, kamukha ni Odette, kamukha ng Yolanda, yan ay taon-taon.
In a conversation, Inger Anderson, the head of the UN Environment Program, or UNEP, emphasized that simply relying on recycling won't solve the environmental challenges we face. Now, she mentioned that moving away from using liquid products like washing liquid could be a way to reduce plastic packaging and more.
So first of all, we can't recycle our way out of this mess. We need to rethink, redesign completely. So recycling is one of the many keys that we will need to make this work. But on the recycling story, clearly what we need to be aware of is that today the material we throw it away, it has no value. So that awareness is step one. Step two is, while not making the consumer the responsible party, because at the end of the day it's business and governments that have to take that responsibility, but we have things that are within our control. We have a party, do we need single-use cups, or can we actually wash them up afterwards? Or do we need straws for every drink that we take? Rethinking of the products is something I'm very keen on. You know, today, so many products, we want them in liquefied form. Our shampoo, our toothpaste, even our washing powder, we want liquid because we're very sort of a species that like convenience. But look, there are many, many things we can deliquify and convey, therefore, in carton and convey in simpler packaging that it can be recycled without the heavy footprint. So there are steps that we ourselves can take, just like with climate. But the bigger system shifts will come from agreements such as what we are about to negotiate that will essentially begin to eliminate certain things and certain practices. But every consumer has a choice. And if you are in a supermarket and you see bananas in a plastic bag or bananas not in a plastic bag, the earth has made them, they're already packaged when we buy them. And so there's a lot of unnecessary packaging that simply is waste. And if you come with your reusable bag, then you're kind of in a good place already. So I think there are some choices that we can make in our consumption habits, and I very much encourage consumers to do that.
Currently, countries from around the world are engaged in talks in Paris to tackle the immense task of ending plastic pollution. The negotiations are taking place at the UNESCO headquarters and involve representatives from 175 nations with varying goals. The objective is to make progress towards a historic agreement that covers the entire life cycle of plastics, with the aim of reaching this agreement by next year. Over the past 20 years, annual plastics production has more than doubled to reach 460 million tons, and it's projected to triple within the next 4 decades. The majority of this plastic is discarded after just one or a few uses, with less than 10% being recycled and over a fifth being illegally dumped or burned. The impact of plastic pollution extends to our natural environment and to humans. Microplastics have been discovered in ice near the North Pole and in fish that inhabit the deepest parts of the oceans. Additionally, microscopic particles of plastic have been found in human blood, breast milk, and even placentas. It's important to note that plastic also contributes to global warming. In fact, according to the OECD, plastic accounted for 3.4% of global emissions in 2019. Nature's Park Port Moresby in Papua New Guinea's capital city launches the World Environment Day Campaign 2023, focusing on the theme of combating plastic pollution, known as Beat Plastic Pollution. Our correspondent from Papua New Guinea, Eko Ortalesa Quinola, reports from Port Moresby.
I am here at Nature's Park Port Moresby to witness the unveiling of World Environment Day campaign. Come and join me. The capital city of Papua New Guinea launches World Environment Day campaign 2023 under the theme Beat Plastic Pollution at Nature's Park Port Moresby. Governor Powis Parkop says the event underscores the city's vision, Amazing Port Moresby 2030.
This event is for the environment, for the climate, for our city as well. To take ownership, to make it our home, to keep it clean, to keep it healthy, to make it a livable city, a city that can give you good quality of life.
City Manager Rabu Frank says making a tangible difference in addressing plastic pollution will create a clean, safe, healthy, and planned city. Meanwhile, still in the capital city, residents joined the first Papua New Guinea celebration for World Tree Kangaroo Day. The event is officially declared by the National Executive Council. Tree kangaroos are found only in the rainforests of Australia, West Papua, and here in Papua New Guinea. They are an iconic key species to the country. Eko Hortaleza Quinola, Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea. Eagle News, we live in extraordinary times.
Now, Southeast Asia has been growing really fast in the last couple of days, or decades rather. It's become one of the top destinations for foreign direct investment among emerging regions. Now, this investment has brought in a lot of benefits like creating jobs, improving people's skills, and raising living standards. But things have gotten a bit tricky lately with all the uncertainty caused by the pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war. The economies in Southeast Asia are finding it difficult to attract foreign investment, and they're facing a challenge to create an environment that encourages sustainable investment, which not only helps the economy but also promotes social and environmental goals. Now, to tackle these challenges, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN Secretariat, have joined forces. They've collaborated on a paper called Enabling Sustainable Investment in ASEAN. It's a project supported by the Heinrich Foundation and the EU. The paper focuses on finding ways to attract sustainable investment and address the current obstacles in the region. Let's listen in.
It's an area where ASEAN needs a lot more help going forward and recognises it needs that help and assistance as well. Climate change is here. It's now, and we need to do more about it and tackling it. And that means making sure that we get the right investments into Southeast Asia to help the economic development continue, help alleviate poverty in the region, help make people's lives a lot better, but do so in a very green way.
We also find that there's a lack of cohesive regional target setting, with targets often expressed differently between countries and varying level of detail in terms of commitments and implementation plans. And we see that only 3 countries in the region have incorporated specific targets for emissions reductions in the transport sector, although this sector is responsible for a quarter of ASEAN's CO2 emissions. We conclude that ASEAN countries would benefit from classifying green and non-green activities in targeted sectors using emerging taxonomies and scaling down or phasing out costly incentives that are not aligned with their climate objectives or the sustainable development goals more generally.
Actually, one aspect that should be elaborated or can be elaborated further, and it is implied in the report as well, is about the need for ASEAN governments to really collaborate. So when we talk about FDI, one of the things is that the fact of the matter, Standard Chartered, we are operating in all the 10 ASEAN markets, and we believe we are the only international bank operating in all the 10 ASEAN markets. So that's interesting because we see the way actually that each of the markets actually behave in attracting FDIs. The awareness is there. But frankly, actually what we see at the moment, there is still a lot of elements where each of the ASEAN member states or the AMS they are competing with each other when it comes to bringing FDI. And most of the countries actually are in need of FDIs. That's also the reason why we see that, as the report highlighted, that incentivizations between non-green and green FDIs often are very similar, because many of the ASEAN member states are really developing countries, and FDI contributes significantly. Indonesia, where I sit, for example, the second largest contributor to the GDP is foreign direct investment. So other than the domestic consumption. So again, actually, many countries, I'm sure, Vietnam actually has very similar, perhaps actually it's the largest actually in Vietnam, and a few others. So what we need is actually that sort of notion that ASEAN can play a bigger part in the global supply chain shift by positioning ASEAN as a big player in the supply chain of the world. So for example, put it very simply, many of the ASEAN markets, and we help facilitate that, pitch in actively. So whether it's the investment ministers or chairman of the IPA of the relevant countries, actually going to US, Europe, Middle East, China, North Asia, and so on, actually to court foreign direct investors to come in. And that's where they really compete, and we see that firsthand, right? So instead of positioning each of the market, why don't we pitch ASEAN as a region as a whole?
There is flows coming down from China. Vietnam, by the way, I think is one of the biggest winners in the region for these investment flows coming down this de-risking, and that's partly because Vietnam itself, of course, is first of all quite a welcoming environment for investment, but also as a country they are in a large number of different trade agreements with Europe and CPTPP and RCEP and others, which means if you're going anywhere and you're manufacturing stuff, it's quite a good place to be. But I'll reiterate what I said. Whilst ASEAN has been doing very well for FDI, it's not getting enough of that supply chain de-risking. There are too many non-tariff barriers in the region, and supply chains straddle borders. It'll be unusual to have a supply chain which is all located within one country. And given that they straddle borders, the region needs to do more to tackle those NTBs.
Now, this study looks at different approaches like promoting responsible business conduct, creating an environment that encourages responsible investors, and strengthening ASEAN's position in the global supply chains. Now, to discuss the findings of this study, the Heinrich Foundation and the EU-ASEAN Business Council have organized a webinar, and they want to bring together important people and organizations in the region to talk about the need to speed up environmental initiatives and strategies for attracting investments that support green growth. North Korea has officially announced its plan to launch a reconnaissance satellite in June, stating that it's necessary to monitor the military movements of the U.S. and its allies in real time, according to state media reports. A senior defense official was cited as the source of this information. Now, Japan, on the other hand, revealed that Pyongyang had informed them of a possible satellite launch as early as this week. However, Japan expressed concerns that North Korea might actually be planning a ballistic missile test, which would defy international sanctions. Take a look.
衛星と称したとしても、この弾道ミサイル技術を用いた発射、これは安保理決議違反であり、国民の安全に関わる重大な問題であると認識をしています。我が国領域内への落下に備えて、本日、防衛大臣から破壊措置命令、これを発出いたしました。
Now, North Korea informed Japan that it would take place between May 31st and June 11. The designated warning areas included waters near the Yellow Sea, the East China Sea, and to the east of Luzon Island in the Philippines, according to a Japanese Coast Guard spokesperson. In 2021, Kim Jong-un had highlighted the importance of developing satellites as a crucial defense project for North Korea's military. Experts point out that the technology used for long-range rockets and space launchers is quite similar. Now, this means that if North Korea successfully puts a satellite into orbit, it could potentially use that as a pretext for testing intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs, which are prohibited under international agreements. Concerned about the potential threat, Japan's defense ministry had issued an order stating that any ballistic missile confirmed to be heading toward its territory should be intercepted and shot down. In tonight's other news, Thai police have formally charged a Canadian man identified as a mercenary with the murder of an Indian gangster in Phuket. The investigation began when Jimmy Sly Sandhu, known for a distinctive scar on his face, was shot and killed in February last year. The Canadian suspect, Matthew Leander Ovide Dupre, had a red notice issued against him by Interpol. Dupre, a former soldier and mercenary, was extradited from Canada and arrived in Thailand on Sunday. He has been charged with premeditated murder, illegal gun possession, and firing a gun. Dupre denies the charges. Sandhu, who arrived in Phuket via a private jet from Malaysia a few days before the incident, was shot on February 15, 2022. CCTV footage obtained by the police captured two individuals emerging from bushes, shooting Sandhu and then fleeing into the night. Prior to this attack, Sandhu's car had a GPS tracker affixed to it. As stated in Interpol's 2022 notice, Sandhu had previously been deported from Canada in 2016 due to multiple criminal offenses. He resurfaced when he was detained in India in 2018 in connection with a ketamine factory. According to Canadian media, a second individual named Jean Carl Larkamp, also wanted in connection with the murder, tragically died in a small plane crash in 2022. The investigation is ongoing to determine the source of the weapon used in the crime. A new report from the United Nations sounds the alarm on increasing food insecurity in 18 hunger hotspots, which include 22 countries, according to the report titled Hunger Hotspots, FAO-WFP, Early Warnings on Acute Food Insecurity, was issued by the Food and Agriculture Organization and the World Food Program. It emphasizes the need for urgent humanitarian action to save lives and prevent starvation in these vulnerable areas between June and November 2023. Take a look.
Within West and Central Africa, we have a particular concern for the conflict-affected areas in Burkina and in Mali, where we have 45,000 people that are facing catastrophic levels of hunger. The worrisome part is also that now we see the conflict in the Sahel spreading to the southern countries in the Gulf of Guinea area. And for example, we have already 27,000 people that have left Burkina Faso, and they have arrived in the northern part of Togo.
The highest alert level has been assigned to Burkina Faso, Haiti, Mali, and Sudan, joining other countries such as Afghanistan, Nigeria, Somalia, South Sudan, and Yemen. These nations require immediate attention as their populations are already facing or expected to face severe hunger, risking catastrophic conditions. Countries like the Central African Republic, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Ethiopia, Kenya, Pakistan, the Syrian Arab Republic, and Myanmar are also flagged as hotspots with a significant concern for acute food insecurity. Furthermore, the report warns of the significant risk of extreme weather events associated with the El Nino climatic phenomenon, particularly affecting Central America. In tonight's other news, last year, the government's tax reforms, beginning with the train law in 2018, resulted in a total additional revenue of 709.9 billion pesos. That is according to the latest data from the Department of Finance. The DOF data revealed that most tax packages witnessed increased collections in the past year. In fact, in 2022, the collections from the train law reached 216.5 billion pesos, showing a 27% increase of 45.5 billion pesos compared to the 171 billion pesos collected in 2021. Let's listen in.
It's a real tax reform because we cut, number one, we cut personal income tax, okay? Cut by 458.1 billion. So that translates into, if you look at your paycheck, that is almost equivalent to 1 month's salary. No? And then we also cut, meron ding negative 148.4 billion there. We cut corporate income tax. Okay, that is to make our corporate income tax competitive with our ASEAN neighbors.
The United Nations Peacekeeping celebrated its 75th anniversary in a special and artistic way at the New York's iconic Times Square. The event featured an inside-out art project where black and white posters adorned the square, showcasing portraits of UN peacekeepers, community members, and other partners.
Since 1948, more than 2 million men and women have served the cause of peace in peacekeeping operations. Millions of people caught up in conflict. The service, the support, the sacrifice of all these men and women who are serving in the field in some of the most dangerous and difficult places on earth. And I'm tremendously grateful for the opportunity to acknowledge their service.
Our project is all about showing faces. You know, it's people standing for what they believe by showing their faces and getting together around something that means and it's important for them. So here we are celebrating the peacekeepers, but also celebrating everyone that believes that peace begins with them.
After participating in the project, Lacroix emphasized the importance of recognizing the 85,000 men and women, including civilian military personnel.
There are out there 85,000 men and women, civilian, military, police, who are protecting hundreds of thousands of people every single day in the most difficult situation in the world, in the most dangerous environment in the world. And their contribution to world peace, their service, needs to be acknowledged and recognized.
As my usual habit, I'd like to end the day on a positive note. Let's encourage and build each other up so that no one is left behind. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angela. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.